People don't like being sold to, do they? They never have, but particularly in this day and age, they don't like being sold to. And they also don't really like businesses and brands being kind of forced upon them. So the joy of PR is that we get to show up as people first. Like we get to be the human behind the business and really connect to people on that basis.
Hello and welcome to the Art of Value Whispering podcast. I'm your host, Melitta Campbell, and this is the show where we talk about a smarter way to market your small business without having to be loud, pushy, or change who you are. Now, recently I was doing some research into why do female founders get less funding? And that took me down a whole rabbit hole of research and ideas. I've been reading books around this. And there's one thing that struck me, and it wasn't something that was written anywhere. This is just my observation. But it's the idea that women don't succeed in business. And it's false because women have proven time and time again to be one of the best investments you can make, that we succeed consistently. But I was like, well, why is this myth sticking around? Why are we still thinking entrepreneur and instantly an image of a man pops into our mind? And I think it's because we don't see women in the media as much as we see men, particularly not successful women in business and women of all ethnicities as well. So the myth persists. And then I spoke to someone about the research that's been done recently around podcasting that shows that just a small percentage of women are podcast guests. And that I find even more interesting because the barrier to becoming a guest on a podcast is really low. You can do it from home, you don't need to travel. So it's very accessible for women. I would have thought that would be the most popular medium, but apparently not. So I think we all can do more to get more visible and help change this perception of business and success belonging to men, because it doesn't. Women have just as many businesses and are statistically more successful over time, and especially women who start a business later in life, and we're even more invisible. So my challenge to all of you is don't just listen to today's podcast, but to act upon it. Because I've invited the wonderful Jo SwaNn, who's a PR expert and helps small businesses to get seen and heard in the media. And she's going to help me bust some of the myths around why women aren't putting themselves forward enough for podcasts, for the traditional media, for guest appearances on TV or radio or wherever it may be. You know, we have such an array of media available to us these days. So, as I said, don't just listen and nod along to Jo's advice today, but really think as you go through this episode, what are the stories I could be sharing? What are the challenges I've gone through that I could share something valuable with others through the media? And let's see if we can all start to shift those figures and shake those myths out of being by showing that women of all ages, of all backgrounds, are extremely successful in business. So I hope you will take up this challenge. Jo has some amazing advice for you today. And on that note, just before I invite Jo, I will be live doing a special masterclass on the 16th of July for my 18th birthday. So it's going to be a bit of a celebration as well. But what I want to gift to you is all the experiences and the stories behind the scenes and everything that has gone into my business over the last 18 years. I've had 3 different businesses over that time. I've spoken to hundreds more female entrepreneurs on this show. So I want to share what I've learned from that process, what shifts I've needed to take, what I do differently today, and answer your questions as well. So if you'd like to join me for that free webinar, go along to melittacampbell.com/birthday, and that will take you to the link where you can give your name and email address to get the invitation to join us for that event. And I hope you will join us. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to sharing more reflections and exactly what you want to hear from that. So that's happening on the 16th of July. I look forward to seeing you there. But meantime, here's Jo. Well, hi, Jo. It's really great to have you with us on the show today.
Hello, thank you for having me. I am excited for this conversation.
Yeah, and I think, PR is one of those things that we think we have to be someone exceptional and special or more advanced. And I think we're going to bust that myth today and give people a real start point on how to go about getting your voice out there in the media more. And the media obviously is changing so fast, and it's not just glossy magazines and newspapers anymore. There's a whole spectrum of things, like this podcast is media. So we'll dive into all of that. But before we do, now I usually ask people about their journey, what brought them to where they are today. And I do want to ask you that, but I also want to ask you about, obviously, I'm based in Switzerland. So
Mhm.
I was very intrigued by the name of your company, which is Chocolate PR. So I'd love to know the story behind that too.
Okay, do you want me to start there with the story of why I called it that?
Whichever story makes most sense to start with.
Well, I suppose it does set the scene a little bit if we talk about why I named the business that. So I actually started my business over 20 odd years ago now, in my 20s. And I suppose it was very much a stance in terms of a walk away from something that wasn't working for me, in terms of the corporate job that I had at the time and the boss that I had at the time, particularly, which is many of our stories, I know. And so, yeah, I decided that actually I was going to go off and I was going to do things my way. And it was a bit of a rebellion, if I'm honest. So it was one of those where you kind of think, right, do you know what? I'm walking away from this because that does not fit with my values. And so I'm going to create something that is me and that does fit with who I actually am. So Chocolate PR was very much, I'm going to make this business something that attracts the right kind of people towards me. And I was very conscious of that right from the start, to consciously create a brand and an image that actually was going to bring people to me that I wanted to work with. So I did predominantly want to work with women. After we'd worked with lots of corporate men and lots of, quite dry or kind of industries and, insurance and engineering and all of this. And that's not my bag. I need a bit of creativity. And so actually Chocolate PR was created in a way to try and attract the right kind of people to me who would enable me to do what I do best and actually flow with a bit of creativity and connect on a personal level. So, yeah, it was a bit of a statement, I think, in terms of using a fun name, to almost warn people off.
Yeah, I love that. And I think when people create a niche, it is exactly that. It's as much about repelling people that are the
Mm,
wrong people that you just wouldn't align with, you just wouldn't have anything in common with and enjoy working with, as much as it is about attracting the right people. So I love that you've integrated that into your name to do that from day one.
yeah.
So tell me more about how you got started. So you were in your 20s. That's quite a bold, courageous move to make back then. And I'm guessing you didn't have the internet or social media. So what was that early journey like?
Do you know what? It's really funny. It feels like a complete lifetime ago, because it was a very different time for business. It was old school business. And actually, do you know what? I actually really loved that. So I built my business through networking. I built it through being quite brazen and quite bold and just putting myself in the right room. I think in your 20s, you don't actually really think too much about planning it, do you? I was just all in. And so I got myself in the right rooms. I got some really great partnerships from day one. We worked alongside a web agency, we worked alongside a marketing agency. I was just going and asking for these opportunities and just found that people were really open to that kind of confidence of like, I can help your clients, I can be a bigger part of your team. And it just grew organically. I had an office from day one. So I kind of went as if I meant business from the beginning. I had a member of staff within the first 12 months. So it was one of those of like, I'm going at this with vigor and the ambition and the energy that a 20 something year old has got. And then it's evolved a lot over the years. So obviously it's changed dramatically over the years. But yeah, in the early days, it was very much about just being seen, getting out there in a way that I really did hold my own. Like I really did put my marker in the sand and go, look, I am a PR expert, even though I was still young at that time, but I could name all these big brands that I'd worked with in the agency. So that helped. And I had fresh ideas, and people were really open to that. So yeah,
Yeah.
for
And
it.
yeah, I worked in PR when I was in my 20s, but in-house. And you had, I can't remember the name of it, but there was this big like directory of every single publication, exactly who to call and how to get hold of them. And these were employed journalists that worked for an organization. You knew you could ring this person and they would be there, and you
Yes.
could build relationships. Whereas, whereas now it's not like that at all. One, we don't have this brilliant directory. It's a bit more cryptic to find the right people, I find, unless you have your lists and things. Um, but I was wondering how you build relationships with the journalists, because then that was what really helped me. I built some great
Mm.
relationships with like half a dozen journalists that were really interested in my topic that I could work with on a monthly basis. It was pretty easy and really fun. And I learned that journalists are very happy when you can meet them in a pub.
Well, that
And I
used to
think
be
even that's changed now.
that's why
Um,
more,
what
unfortunately.
so what have you seen change over those years?
I mean, staffing at media has changed massively. So I actually used to work in newspapers and radio and magazines. Like I've worked in-house within media as well. So I know what it's like to work in a massive newsroom with that buzz and all of the people, and it's incredible. But that is not what newsrooms look like these days. It's really sad. So there might be a real core team of a handful of people, and everyone else is working from home, or everyone else is basically a freelance kind of person that's just drafted in for certain topics. So the core of how journalists work is so different. And the pressure on them is massive, actually, on the few that are left. So it is really difficult to cut through to them. They don't pick up the phone. Everything's on answer machine. Like you just cannot get to have a conversation with most of these people. Um, so I think in terms of from someone that's new starting out to this, it's what you said. It's about trying to hone in on a few people that will really make a difference to you. And in these day and age, it tends to be freelancers. So it tends to be freelance journalists that write across a number of different titles, but they will own a topic. So, for example, we work with freelancers that specialize in health stories or specialize in business stories, and we know that it's their remit to sell as many of those stories in as possible. That's how they're getting paid these days. It's not a salaried role. And so actually if you can be really helpful to a freelancer, that's more kind of the way in quite a lot of the time.
Yeah. And it sounds like it's a bigger opportunity. So instead of building one relationship with one person at one publication, you're building a relationship with one person that writes for several publications.
Yeah, so that's definitely useful. And I think the other thing to bear in mind is actually the media has changed in terms of how they allow you to provide content as well.
Mm.
So there's so many more opportunities now for people to actually create their own content on media platforms. So certainly over here in the UK, there's lots of websites where you can now actually upload your own stories to websites. So there's lots of news sites that kind of allow a certain amount of user generated content to make it onto their sites, as well as the stuff that has to go through the news team. So that's been brilliant because it's been a real door opener for people who are just starting out and a bit scared at the idea of speaking to a journalist. But if they learn the right tools to be able to write the story in the right way, so obviously we know that you can't just knock up any old thing and it'll get accepted. But if they learn the right tools to actually present their story to a certain format, then they can literally upload it themselves directly onto a news site. So that's a massive game changer because it's putting the business owner back in control. And it takes a bit of the fear out of it, of actually like, oh, I don't want to speak to that journalist, they're too scary.
Yeah. And once you've been published somewhere, that gives you that little bit of extra confidence that, oh, I've been published and therefore I can get published elsewhere. I have something worth saying. So let's backtrack a little bit. And how would you describe what PR is as a marketing strategy for small business owners?
Okay. PR has so many different arms to it, but I think the easiest way to think about it initially is press. So getting yourself in the press for free without paying to advertise there. So it's how you leverage the opportunities that are out there in the media to celebrate yourself, your business, your mission, your message, your story. I do talk about it as a game. Like, I do think it is about playing a game of giving the media what they want so that we can get what we need. So yeah, free coverage in the media.
And it's not just free though, is it? Because you've got your advertising that you pay for, but also it's seen as advertising. Whereas
Yeah.
if you're in the press, it's
Mm.
free and it's like a third party endorsement. It's someone else saying, Jo SwaNn's amazing at PR. She has something worth you paying attention to. So it's even better than advertising.
Yes, exactly, because it gives that credibility and that authority and that third party stamp of approval, like you say. So I think, yeah, people don't like being sold to, do they? They never have, but particularly in this day and age, they don't like being sold to. And they also don't really like businesses and brands being kind of forced upon them. So the joy of PR is that we get to show up as people first. Like, we get to be the human behind the business and really connect to people on that basis. So what PR looks like is often it could be an announcement about something that's happening in someone's business. It could be a story about someone's business launching and actually what their journey has looked like to enable them to launch this business. Or it could be some tips. It could be that people start to share knowledge and actually, they get recognized as an expert because they're sharing what they know. So there's lots of different ways that you can tap into PR, but all of it is based around connection and really showing up as a person, not as a business.
Yeah, and I think that's even more important in these days of AI. And for years, I used to do a lot of training around how to write for the web. And I made the point that, anyone from anywhere can publish anything about anything. You don't know who is behind a lot of websites. So you have to prove who you are and build that connection and that trust. And now
Yeah.
where AI is driving a lot of content, that becomes even more important, I think. So yeah, and again, this third party endorsement that like Jo is a real person with something valuable to say counts much more than it ever did before, I think. So I think it's a really great strategy. But being humans, we have these doubts.
Yeah.
And, the reason you're on the podcast is because we connected over a discussion in a community about how can women start to feel confident putting themselves out there. We were looking at particularly around podcasts because a
Mm,
lot of women aren't showing up for podcasts as much as they could do. And
yeah.
it's a great strategy because you're just having a conversation. We're naturally good at conversations. We
Yeah.
don't have to go anywhere. A lot of podcasts are done online. So it's just such a phenomenal marketing strategy and it's a lot of fun. You can build your network and connections at the same time.
Yeah.
But when I asked women in my network, why aren't you putting yourself out there? A lot of the case it was, "Well, I don't really know where to start. I don't know what I would say. I don't know if I'm ready." And so I think there's a lot of fear
Mhm.
about showing up with your authentic voice. And people talk about an authentic voice and what even is that? Can you share your perspective on that?
Oh, this is a big one with the clients that we work with. So I tend to work with people when they come to me for PR because they know that they've got something to say. They are driven by a passion and a purpose. And they're usually real mission led entrepreneurs who have maybe quit corporate and then they've created this business because they really want to make a change about something. But the whole stumbling block that gets in their way is that they don't know how to communicate that change. And they also don't know how to show up for themselves because they've previously been told in corporate, maybe don't shout too loudly, or maybe don't be too much like you, because actually you're just in a role. Like, we are squashed a lot, I feel, in corporate life. And that's certainly my experience as well, which is why I left that agency. And then I think we find it really difficult to figure out, well, what's okay, how much is too much, how much is not enough, like, what if I don't say this right, and that you just get massive imposter syndrome because you feel like you're starting from scratch. So many of them have said to me, oh, but I've only just started this business. And I'm like, you are not the business. Like, look at what you've achieved in your life. Look at actually how successful you have been in that role. And now look what you're trying to do with the world. Like, you are an incredible person that more people need to know about. And so a lot of our work is actually just mirroring back to people. The very first bit of work that we do with them is to create a media bio. And that basically pulls out all of the things that they have achieved in their life, all of the things that they're passionate about, their best qualities and characteristics. And it just mirrors back to them that they are ready for this. But it really does take that kind of hand holding and coaching a lot of the time for them to be ready to believe that their voice matters and that they are ready to have those conversations. I think so much online trolling as well doesn't help. Like, the internet is a mean place a lot of the time. And so I think people were really scared and nervous that, well, if I say the wrong thing, someone's going to come for me. And it's like, well, that is the world that we live in, unfortunately. So we kind of have to just be strong and fight for what it is that we care about so that the people that need us find us. And I think that's the main shift that we see when people start to figure out, okay, if I stay small, if I stay in my tiny little pocket of the world where maybe I know this many people and I can make this much impact, or if I go out there into the world and actually I can start to have a much bigger impact. And that's actually what I wanted to do when I set out this business. They focus on those people that need to find them and being seen for the sake of their audience. It's a massive change in mindset. The problem is when they're thinking about them and they think it's an ego thing to show up and to be on podcast and be like, look at me. And it's not that. It's so not that for every single one of my clients. They don't want to be famous for the sake of being famous. They want to have a bigger voice and a bigger presence so they can help more people. And I think it's that shift.
Yeah, I think you've touched on so many important points there that
That was a lot, but
yeah, yeah, go back, re-listen to what Jo just said. Because yeah, so way back in corporate, I used to coach leaders on their communication skills, particularly for in their team environments. And I had a women's network where I
oh
helped
yeah.
to be more present and build their confidence in their network. And what
Mm,
I saw so often with the women, particularly, was that the reason they come to work each day and put their all into it was to make a contribution, was
mm,
to make it different. They loved the work, they loved the connection. Obviously, they want the status and the position and to progress and the money behind it. But that wasn't what was driving them. It was really this making a difference.
mm,
And I think this is what holds a lot of women back from being more visible is they think it's all about the ego
yeah,
and they don't want to put themselves above anyone else. They want to be fair, but it's not about that. And I love that reframe that it's about showing up for your audience, that they
yeah.
need to hear from you. And if they're only ever hearing from these ego-driven male leaders, not that they're all that way, of course, we need to have that balance out there in the marketplace, and they are looking for our voice. And I know myself personally, I'm loving Netflix and watching TV more than ever because there are so many shows now that have a strong female narrative. And I'm
Mm,
loving that. And we need that out there in the media as well. And we can make that happen. We can be that narrative. And I've seen it as well with the coaching I do with marketing and communication and messaging. It's the first step isn't necessarily the message, but the self-belief. And I love that you've got a book celebrating you with PR, and that's where you start. It's not with the strategy at all. It's with this reframe, this building the self-belief that you
mm,
have a voice and it deserves to be out there helping people. So I love that. Um, because you came from PR when you started your business,
mm.
was that easy for you to do to find your authentic voice and get out there?
Oh, that's a big question. Do you know what? So there's been like two phases to my business. So in the early days, completely ballsy, completely gutsy, completely went out like as I am. And yeah, that did me well. So it was very creative how I showed up. It was very confident, it was very full of life, it was very in person because it was all I built my business in person in networking. So that, and like we talked about the name, like that did feel very authentically who I was. Fast forward like maybe 10 plus years, 10, 15 years later, I'd built the business very organically, a very traditional agency sort of way. We'd worked with lots of big brands. And we were really like riding the wave in terms of, a really established agency that had good credentials and awards and all of this. And so at that point, I was like, right, okay, everyone knows who I am. Like we've made it. We've got this fabulous brand. But then I fell out of love with the work that I was doing. And actually I needed to change tactics. So I really effectively ripped up the business and started again. It didn't actually, but like if you think about it, I got rid of all the corporate clients and I was left with, well, what do I do now? Because that is no longer making me happy. It was frustrating me like in so many ways. Um, and so I ended up kind of reorganizing the business and starting to work more with individual founders. And female entrepreneurs. And that took me into the online space. And the online space was terrifying for me because I had built my business in the offline space. I suppose quite a male dominated environment, and I was quite comfortable there. Enter the online space, and the coaching world is full of beautiful women who are super confident on camera, who look like they've been there for their entire lives. Like, I didn't even know which bit of camera to look in. Like, I didn't know how to work Zoom. Do you know what I mean? I was just like absolutely out of my comfort zone. And I had to sort of find a different version of me because the previous business had been built up through chocolate PR, through the brand. And yes, it was me that was going out networking, but sometimes it was my team. Chocolate PR was the thing that was known. Moving into the online space, I had to be Jo SwaNn, and Jo SwaNn had to be the absolute face of the business, and she had to be everywhere if she wanted to make any sort of impact. And I found that really hard, really, really hard. So I talk about that in the book about how I went through a massive bout of my own imposter syndrome because I got introduced in at quite a high level into the online space. So I was like doing masterclasses and running masterclasses for like some of the real sort of OGs in the online space. And yes, I knew what I was doing about PR, but I just didn't feel at home in this environment. I didn't have any personal branding shots. Like we just didn't do that kind of thing. I was like, oh my God, I just felt really, really out of sync with it all for quite a while. And I showed up, but I don't think I was really showing up properly 100% as my whole character because I just didn't really know what that needed to look like. And it actually wasn't until I wrote my book where I kind of went back to embracing, do you know what? Actually, I like to be a bit playful and I like to, to do things a bit differently. And, the cover of the book, when the publishers like were talking to me about it, they were like, that's not really what a book cover looks like. And I was like, no, but that's what I want it to look like this.
For anyone that can't see the video, it's got like golden balloons and stars and yeah,
Uh,
lightning and yeah, it's really fun, but it's still elegant and classy, I have to say.
yeah. And then the vibe of it is very much like it's got a party theme running through it. And some people might think, well, that's not very professional. Like, she's not going to be sort of seen as an expert if she dresses it all up in this way. And I think that was the real moment where I was like, but this is my way of doing it. And this is my stamp. And that's why I am an expert, because for people that want to take the pressure off and to take a bit of the heaviness out of PR, that's what I'm here to do. And so I've sort of refound myself um, through that process. And then I sort of feel like ever since I've been on a path that feels more right. But yeah, I definitely had a bit of a wobble at that
Yeah. And
time.
I can totally relate to that journey. You know, my first business, I was working in communications, but for corporate, and it was all network, working with some of the most powerful men in the world. But that was fine. I was quite happy with that. Didn't do any marketing. The work just came. But then I realized, yeah, it doesn't feel aligned with who I really am. Started working with female founders like yourself and business owners and loving it. But then you have to be you to attract these people. It's a very different way of putting yourself out there, very different way of marketing. And then the whole online digital marketing was rising
Yeah,
at that time. It's like, oh my gosh, where do you begin with social media? It was
yeah,
pretty scary. And I think I'm still finding myself out. And like you, like writing
yeah.
my first book and then my second book, I could see the evolution in where I've
Mm,
come and how I show up and how I articulate my value. Looking back, but one, I love that you've shared that was a process for you. And even though you're an expert in that area, it still took time to find your voice, your authenticity.
yeah.
But looking back, do you think there was anything you could have done to speed up that journey, or did it always have to be that process?
I think, yeah, I probably could have sped it up if I had identified it a little bit sooner. I think I sort of kept in a little bit of I don't know, a weird state where I wasn't really processing what was happening because I was still
Mm.
delivering. Like I still had clients and I was still in these, incredible circles of people. So I think from the outside, it looked like I had it all together, but I don't think I stopped and asked myself truly, like, what's wrong here? And it was only when I'd signed up to write the book. And it's only when I put myself under that pressure of actually putting my heart and soul onto pen and paper and thinking about how do I want to show up here that I started to ask myself the questions. So I think, yeah, I guess I needed that point of actually writing the book to challenge myself. Maybe something earlier down the line could have given me that challenge instead. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both as well. And the reason I asked that question is because I think a lot of people start their business and they get quite stressed if within a few months they haven't figured it all out.
mm,
But I think you have to mess up a few times to really understand and challenge yourself on what it is that's really important. And that's a process. And it doesn't mean that we're wrong in the beginning. It's just that we keep getting better. We keep evolving. We keep understanding ourselves more and bringing more of ourselves into that relationship we have with our clients. But it's kind of a co-creation with our clients going through that process. So I think it's quite hard to do in isolation. So
yeah, it is a process, definitely. And it does go through phases, doesn't it? And
yeah.
that's the same with our clients. So even if we start with our clients and we're going, right, you need to tell us everything so that I can draw out all the best bits of you to put back in this bio, even at that point, they might still scratch the surface. And then a few months later, they might be like, oh, actually, I've got this story. And that would really help, like, stress that point, or that would really show that I'm this sort of person, or that this is my value. And we're like, yes, that's what we need. We need that depth, but they're not always comfortable at the beginning, like giving everything, because we're not really wired that way, are we? So it does take a little while to get in the flow.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's a beautiful journey of self-discovery, running a business and putting yourself out there and having those relationships and figuring out what it is that you do stand for and where
Yeah.
you can have the most impact. But it's a fun journey, particularly if you have support with someone like yourself or a coach or whatever. Otherwise, you can just get in that spiral of
Oh,
overthinking,
God. Yeah,
which doesn't help.
no, you can go around in circles and waste so much time, can't you?
Yeah,
If you don't
yeah.
have a bit of direction. Yeah.
So way back when I used to do PR, there was always like this big thing. You had to be story worthy. You had to put something out there that was really interesting. It was new, it was whatever. And I think this is one of the things that's quite hard if you are going in the press as yourself to see yourself as press worthy and story
Yeah.
worthy. And I know in the book, you're like, you are already press worthy. Can you tell the listeners a little bit more about what it means to be press-worthy and how they can build that confidence that they do have something that they can share in the media?
Yes. Okay, let's go. So there's two sides to this. Okay. We talk about the main two focuses of PR being your story and your knowledge. So you can come at this from either way and you are press worthy from whichever side you choose. So your story is press worthy because you are a person with a story to share. So the media don't like promoting businesses, they don't like promoting brands as such. What they like to do is tell stories about people. So one of the easiest wins is when someone starts a business and they tell the story of, well, I used to be in corporate and then this happened to me. And then I needed to get out of there, or I was made redundant, or I had this crisis, or whatever the part of the journey is. And now I'm doing this because I want to help more people. I want to help other people that are in that situation. And this is my mission. That in its own right is a story, but people don't see it because they just see it as, well, that's just my life. But your life is your story. So we really need people to understand that actually there's an opportunity in the media to just share that journey. And there are so many platforms that love to celebrate female entrepreneurs, or that love to celebrate people who are starting out in business. There's so much more opportunity now than there ever has been to actually to do that. So we ask people to really think about that journey and to really celebrate that, because actually no one is like them. No one else can share that exact same story or their learnings that they've had from that. So that's the one side. Like the story is always a story.
The thing about a story, so I was a TEDx speaker coach for two events for a while, and that was one of the biggest things people found difficult, particularly as a lot of them were real experts at what they did, was sharing their personal story. But
Mm.
that's the bit that people relate and connect with. So on one hand, you're thinking I have to be something like really wild and crazy and different, but actually that's not what people can connect with. So sharing your journey and how you were just like them actually has
Mm.
more resonance than anything else.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that? Is that story worthy enough to be like others?
It is, because we want people to see themselves in you, don't we? So if you're helping them do something, they need to see that you've been there and that you understand. So it's that connection piece. So,
Mm.
lots of our clients have gone on to be coaches, or they work in the health space or mental health space. And they often refer back to their own struggles so that their potential clients see, okay, they get it. And they're not just someone who's read a lot of books, they actually know how it feels. And we know that journalists, that's what they are commissioned for. They're commissioned to share stories. So, yeah, it's really, really powerful. Often, though, when people come to us and they've started a business, they just think that's the story. They think, well, I've only just started in business, so I don't have much to say. And, all I can talk about is this business. And that's where they're going wrong, because we need to have that whole bit that comes before the business, which is what makes sense of the business. So I think that's where people sometimes get stuck as well. They're like, well, I'm not ready for PR because I'm new. And it's like, but you're not new. You've been on this planet for like 40 years. So, so we want to talk about, what's brought you to this point. So yeah, I think that's it from the story side. The knowledge side, again, people presume, well, you need to have been in business for 10, 20 years to be able to be an expert in the media. We've launched experts before they've even launched their business. So just like think about that for a second. We've had people in national media quoted as an expert before they've even had a client. So this is the power of PR, and that's all about how you position yourself. So this particular client had had a lot of life experience in this particular subject. She had done some qualifications before she was actually launching her business. All of that made her an expert. She could help people already. Like, she could genuinely offer advice that was going to guide and support people. So again, she doesn't have to wait until she's 5, 10 years down the line in business to position herself as the expert. And she said to us that that fast tracked her business by 5 years. Like, her 5 year plan was collapsed because she was already identified in national press as an expert from day one of her business. So that's how powerful it can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for some of my clients, we've rebrand expertise as expert dash ease because they are already an expert, as you say. And even with yourself, you ripped up your business and started again, but then you added, which I loved, but I didn't really, as it was still me and I still had all the skills. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people start their business or they pivot or they change in some way and forget, as you say, you've got a whole lifetime of experience that's
Yeah.
brought you to here. And I don't think anyone starts a business, women especially, if they don't really believe deep down they have something valuable to offer.
Mm.
They know that, which is
Mm.
why they start the business. And then suddenly they kind of have all this doubt and realize, oh gosh, this is scarier than I thought. But then, you already have that expertise. So you have the expertise, you just need the expert ease and to believe in that, which comes back to your
Mm.
first step. But yeah, I mean, it's already there. And we see it, well, real experts like Brené Brown and people like that, for example, Mel Robbins, they already spoke and had that expertise, but then off the back of like a TED talk, then they wrote the book, then they
Mm.
developed the program, then they really went on to stratospheric
Yeah.
success. That wasn't where they started.
Yeah.
So yeah, we see it all the time. So I think we just need to
That's a
dive
really
in and get
good
started.
point. Yeah, that's a really good point, that actually think about how they've almost reverse engineered that business, but normal people kind of try and do it the other way around. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting, isn't it? Mm.
Yeah, and we had Andrew and Pete on the show a little while ago, and they were talking about like that cheeky ass to get that big domino. Don't go
I
for
love
little
that.
dominoes.
The
Yeah,
cheeky ass. Yeah.
start start with that big domino, and
Yeah.
that will just speed up the whole process. And it
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, and it's not necessarily easy. It takes a little bit of time and effort, and not all the big dominoes are going to work, but you just need one. And then it's going to give you that kickstart that will be amazing. And I was listening to someone recently or having a talk with someone, and they were like, yeah, I just went out and I asked people, like, this is what I'm going to do. And one of the leaders in her industry said, I love your approach. Let me help you. And they launched her business for her. And
Wow.
yeah, saved her a lot and introduced her to people. So you
Yeah.
just never know. If you're out there, you're being honest, being yourself.
Yeah.
That's what opens doors, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, brilliant. Yeah, absolutely agree.
So, talking about taking your first step,
Mhm.
what is that first step?
Into PR.
Yeah, if someone has a business, thought, okay, I want to go out, share a story, where do they even begin? Is it with finding the right publications they want to be in, or what's that first step?
First of all, it's figuring out what you actually want to say, because then you can decide where you take it. So, if it's a business launch story, for example, so let's say you are in those early phases, and when I say that, you could be up to like 2 years in. Like, if you've not done any launch PR, you could still get away with it. And telling that story of actually how you've left corporate and now what you're set to do, and what you're launching. So, I would also always say start with local PR. And people often discount local PR because they're like, oh, my audience isn't local. And, I don't particularly want to get in the local rag. But it's about being part of an ecosystem. So if you start by getting your coverage out there from local press, national press often observe local press. So we've had lots of our clients be picked up by national media from being in the local media. And it also has a ripple effect online. So some local media have like sort of affiliate sites, if you like, that then cover their stories. So you might find that you've got yourself in the local paper, and actually you end up on like a Yahoo website or MSN, and all of a sudden your reach just explodes. So local press is probably the easiest place to start because it's kind of a softer place, and local media do love to celebrate local people if you can pitch it right. Um,
Hmm. And I
so
guess
it's not
you can
scary.
always leverage that story too. You have that coverage and if you start to promote that,
Mhm.
regardless of if it gets picked up by a big media house, then you're still getting that story in front of your audience. So
Of
your
course.
audience might not be local, but you can then take that local press and give it to your audience.
Yes, exactly. And that's about how you use it smartly. So you then celebrate the media because then you take people with you. And we talk about in the book The Art of Celebration. And Nick Pigeon wrote the foreword for me, who's a positive psychologist.
Mhm.
And Nick talks about the art of celebration, of the vibe of celebrating you, yourself, your expertise, and how that takes other people with you. And it's just kind of this momentum rise of when you've been featured in the press, you will share that on your socials, and everyone will be like, oh my God, that's amazing. And you create this buzz, and then you're literally elevating yourself in their eyes. So it's so, so powerful. And it's a really easy way to start and get off the ground because it feels a little bit more within reach than maybe going for some of the bigger ones to start with.
Yeah, and talking about big dominoes, I think Nick's a master at that. I remember
Oh,
her early journey, and she's collaborated with Brendan Burchard, who was like much further on, but then that helped her like grow her business and expose her to a bigger market. So,
yeah.
she's a great example of how that can be done.
Yeah, she's a perfect person to follow in terms of how she's mastered that expert kind of positioning. So yeah, I think she's definitely worth a follow. Nick Pigeon.
Yeah, with a Y in there somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm always like, there's a Y and an I in Nick. Hmm?
Yeah,
Yeah.
NY.
You'll
Yeah,
find out. Yeah, she's great to follow, very inspirational.
yeah. So I think story-wise, local media, tips-wise, if you're going in more from an expert perspective, I think that's then a case of niching down to figure out where those articles are being written. So, for example, one of our clients is a happiness expert. So, we focus in on journalists who write stories around mental health and well-being and happiness. So, the kind of quick, easy way to do that is to literally do a bit of a Google and just see what are the latest articles that are coming out with those keywords and which journalist has written them. And you start there because obviously they're the ones that are writing that current content on that subject. So you have to be able to position yourself as an expert, obviously, when you reach out to them. But that's quite an easy way of finding who the right ones are to then to start to build relationships with.
Yeah. And you said earlier that journalists these days are under a lot of pressure. So you're actually doing them a favor if you reach out to them with a great idea
Yeah,
and you're already this fully formed expert, because then it's just making their job easier. So
exactly.
you're being of service to the journalist, not the other way around necessarily.
exactly. And that's also a mindset shift, because often we think, oh, I don't want to bother them. I don't want to bug them, or they'll think I'm a pain. But actually, if you show up properly, armed with the right material, you are an absolute gift to them. So yeah, that's also a repositioning thing of how you think about that.
Yeah, brilliant. So we've got our start point. And I think coming back to that poll that I did that asked people why they're not, well, women, why they're not showing up on podcasts, for a lot of them it was the idea that they're not ready yet. And you've
Mm.
touched on that a little bit, but I love that in your book you're really talking about how this idea of being ready is really a myth.
Mm.
What advice would you give someone who is out there thinking, yeah, I like all of these ideas, I'm just going to wait a little bit longer?
Why? Why would you wait? You will literally waste years just waiting. And I think that frustration is not a place that you want to get to. The frustration of seeing other people do it. This is what I'm seeing a lot now. So there's sort of two different camps of people in the online space at the moment. People that have been here a long time and really are experts in their space, who have kind of probably built from a different kind of business and then entered the online space. People who are brand new in the online space, who great, they're coming in and there's fresh blood, and they've got new ideas to offer. But what happens is the people that are like 10 years in are now getting like pushed out by the people who are in the early stages of their businesses, because they're the ones that are taking the floor space. They're the ones that are prepared to show up. And so the experts that have been doing it for ages are now going, oh my God, right, I better do some of this stuff because I'm going to get overtaken by all these people. So the frustration that you will end up having if you don't lead the way is so much worse than just taking that risk at the beginning and just being proactive and making your move. It's infuriating to watch because people are incredible at what they do, but they get stuck in this tiny little pocket. And lots of businesses fail because they're just not creating enough noise around themselves. And that shouldn't be the way when the business can genuinely make a big difference. We just need to be able to play the game, to get out there and to do it faster. Like, there is no time for messing around right now. We've got to get out there faster, otherwise we're not going to be found. And we're certainly
Yeah.
not going to be found by AI. We're not going to be found by all the online tools if there is no online exposure of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm getting a lot of recommendations now from ChatGPT that it's presenting me to my ideal clients when they're asking for help with their business. But that's because I've got a lot of content out there, a lot of
Yeah,
content in the press, which is, as we said, is third party endorsement. So it's highly trusted. It's
yeah,
not just something I'm putting out on my website.
yeah,
So it's really helping you to be found in
yeah.
so many ways that you're not even aware of.
Mm.
Yeah, it's really key.
Yeah, exactly. And so the sooner you can start that, the better, because otherwise you're just going to be playing catch up constantly. And that's not what we want. We want people to go forth and lead, don't we? From the minute that they have these genius business ideas, like, go and get out there with it.
So when you reach out to a journalist, you found your publication or you found the journalist that talks about your specialization and they don't answer,
Mhm,
or they say, this isn't for me right now.
mhm.
Can you go back to that person, or is that the end of that relationship?
You have to go back to them or you wouldn't get very far. I think this is one of the lessons, that we do need resilience, because we will get more no's than we will get yeses, for sure. So a lot of PR is about timing. A lot of it is about whether you send them the right information at the right time when they actually need it, or if they're working on another deadline, they will just shelve it and they might come back to it or they might not. So I think in terms of communicating with journalists, it's important to be really clear what you're sending them. And in the subject line, lots of journalists have said to us, people just miss this as a trick so many times. So put in the subject line the actual content topic, so that if they can't use that piece at that time, they can then go back into their emails and search. And when they need a neuroscientist or a psychologist or a happiness expert, they know they've got that in there somewhere, and then you can be found again. So it's almost like you've got to be clever with how you send them the information so that you're not just lost in their massive emails, because they will delete most of them. So
Yes, makes
yeah.
total sense.
Yeah, so that's quite logical, but also it is about persistence. So it's not personal if they don't use your content. It's just literally they didn't need it that time, but they might need it again, or they might need something different. So I think the more you get to know a journalist, the more you get to know their vibe and their style and the kinds of things that they write, and you can make the pitch tighter and better. And then topical things, like, be really conscious of timeliness. So, if there's awareness days, if there's a certain season that sort of makes sense for you to be speaking about your subject, like, be reaching out to them at those times more so. But yeah, a no is not a no forever. Like, you've got to really be persistent and resilient.
Yeah, yeah. Jo,
Yeah.
thank you so much. You shared so much, and we could talk about this all
Felt like
day.
there's a lot out there.
But you do have your book, Celebrating You with PR, which I can highly recommend. It's really pitched at people who are doing that PR for themselves, maybe not quite sure how to go about it, have a few doubts. And I love that it starts with all the myths and really helping people believe that they deserve to be out there first. Because if you're listening to the show, you really do deserve to be out there. I know that all the listeners I've met or spoken to, or we have met online in different ways, they're all super, super smart. I'm always like quite intimidated by how incredible they are. So, yeah, for sure, if you're hearing this right now, you are ready, you've got something. So, get out there, get Jo's book, follow her advice. And one thing that you mentioned right at the beginning that you do at the beginning of a relationship with a new client is you help them with that media bio. You help them extract what it is about them. And I know
Yes.
you've got a little tool or program that helps people to find that. And you very kindly offered a generous discount on that for listeners of the show. But can you tell them a little bit about that and how it's going to help them?
Sure. So this has been one of the things that we've really helped hundreds and hundreds of clients on over the years. But we found that we were a massive bottleneck in terms of we can only deliver so many of these bios. And they were actually taking us hours and hours to write as we were digging people's information out of them to try and pull out their backstory and their mission and their message and all of that. So, with the power of AI, we have now created a tool that enables us to do this. So, it's effectively like me kind of coaching out all the information out of you. And it's based on our foundations, it's based on all the questionnaires that we've used over the years, it's based on PR practices. So it's not something that ChatGPT could do because it hasn't got all of that back end stuff plugged into it to make sure it's asking you and pulling out the right things. It effectively coaches you. So we've created this into a little AI bio builder, which I am so impressed with myself for creating, I have to say. And it's really good. It is really, really amazingly powerful. Everyone that's used it loves it. So yes, that's normally on for, I think we sell it at 197, and you've got a link for a £97 offer. And you can use it as many times as you like. So people use it to create social media bios, people use it to create the like introduction that they would send to the journalist, because it's got all the power punches in there that you need, all the different layers all pulled together just beautifully. And it just helps you really take confidence because it's showing you why you're amazing. It's effectively me mirroring back to you why you're amazing and why you should have a voice and why that voice deserves to be heard. So yeah, I think it's a really easy way for people to just take that first step of going, all right, how do I want to show up in the world? Who actually am I? What do I need to say? What do I need to share? And it sort of does the hard work for you. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's really the hardest part because if
It
you're
is.
giving it a story or some expertise and some tips, that's all about like your expertise and giving something to the audience. Your bio, it's really, this is the bit that's as
Very
close
vulnerable.
to bragging as possible.
Yeah, and you need to brag, because if you don't, you're not going to be taken seriously by journalists. So that's the hard bit. We
Yeah.
actually need to show up as the very best version of ourselves to get through the door, but we're not very good at that.
No. And it's really hard to do for yourself.
Yes.
And it's central to everything. If you want to speak on stages, if you want to be in the press, if you want to get a podcast interview, if you want to fill out like a really good social media profile, you need a really good bio. And on your website, of course, as well. I mean, there's so many situations. It's really
Works hard for you when you've got it, for sure.
yeah, so I'm really thankful that one, you've taken the time to create that and as you say, power that with everything that you know works best, but also to share that at this brilliant discount for our listeners. So thank you very much for that.
You are welcome.
So they'll have your tool, they'll have your book. If they want to know more and to follow you, where's the best place for them to connect with you?
I think I probably share most of what goes on Instagram. So I'm at Jo PR on Instagram. So you'll see me out speaking at different events or sharing kind of my take on things, and also seeing client coverage. I think that can help inspire people sometimes when they kind of see what other people have done. So yes, that's quite a nice place to connect. And then obviously we've got our website, which has got a little bit more information about the ways we work with people, which is just chocolatepr.co.uk.
Fantastic. And I'll put all of those links in the show notes as well, which you'll find at melittacampbell.com/podcast. Jo, thank you so much for your time today. This has been really fascinating. And I really feel we need so many more female voices out there in the media. I can't wait to see where our listeners take the advice that you've given today and where it takes them.
Yeah, let's go for it. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jo.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you have found this conversation as valuable as I have, and I really appreciated the way that Jo reinforced that you don't have to be a celebrity or someone who is loud, polished, or has everything already figured out. You already have stories that are worth sharing, that are valuable for others and worthy of press and media attention. So please do take up my challenge and come and let me know on LinkedIn or drop me an email and let me know what you've taken away from this episode, where you're going to pitch to and how you're getting more visible out there. Let me know if you're sharing anything on social media where you've got some media attention after listening to this episode. Do tag me in and Jo, and we'll be there to congratulate you and celebrate alongside you as well. And do come and join me for my 18th birthday celebration event on the 16th of July. You'll get all the details and register at melittacampbell.com/birthday. Meantime, I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And recently, I've had so many incredible conversations with people on the podcast that I have decided that while I had reduced the frequency of this show to make it a little bit more manageable to every other week, I have too many great conversations I want to share with you. So until I take a summer break in probably mid-July after the 18th birthday party, then I will be releasing episodes every week again. And I have some amazing conversations coming up for you. I can't wait for you to experience this. And they're all going to build on this idea that Jo has started today, that you already have some incredible stories and value to share with the media and with your clients. So I can't wait for you to experience those. Meantime, I've been your host, Melitta Campbell, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye.